Greetings, everybody! Just want to stop by here and give a quick couple of thoughts on Dragon Quest XI, a crazy long JRPG that came out pretty recently, and it's going to take a while before a full review can get done because this game is upwards of about 100 hours. I'm about 15 hours in, but I wanted to give you some thoughts, maybe help you decide if you were on the fence still about this game, if you should pick it up, or if you shouldn't. So, Dragon Quest XI, what the heck is it? What is it about? Well, you play as this unnamed and mute protagonist, as most JRPGs seem to be fond of. I don't know why they keep doing this, but anyway. So you play as this person, you name this guy and you become this character. And you go on this grand adventure. You are basically the luminary. You find out that you were actually separated from your family at birth or just shortly after that, and you've been hidden away from the world. You want to go out and explore the world. You don't know why. You've had this feeling inside you all along, but you need to go out there and you need to stop the forces of evil. And unfortunately, there seems to be a lot of people who are against you, but thankfully there are some there that will be your companions, people who trust in you and want to see you fight the darkness. So pretty straightforward RPG tale here of good versus evil. Not a lot of nuance to it yet that I have found, but that's okay. There's a fun couple of wrinkles in there, so there's some things that are a little bit different than you'd normally expect, which I really appreciate. Anyway, like I said, I'm 15 hours in. I've gotten the first 3 companions. You do get, I believe, 6 altogether, but the ones I'm starting off here are with Erik, Veronica, and Serena. Erik is a rogue, Serena is this healer, and Veronica is more of a straight-up mage. And you play as the main character who has access to a sword and shield, a great sword, and you kind of get multiple skill trees, which all these characters do have access to, so you don't necessarily need to play Veronica, per se, as the straight-up mage. She can have, like, a whip and other things, too. She still casts magic if you want her to, but you can kind of specialize them, which is nice in this game. This skill tree, it's a little bit more reminiscent of Final Fantasy X and the Chronosphere system, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, what that basically means is you start off kind of in the center of this map, of this grid, and as you get more of these skill points, as you level up, you can kind of pick spheres attached to that center one and kind of branch off. So if you want something that's in the top left-hand corner of the grid, sheet, you have to kind of build up to it and kind of specialize your character. So, for me right now, I've kind of been running great swords, but also kind of sword and shield with the hero. I'm hoping that you can kind of specialize into 2 portions of the skill tree. It seems like you can kind of spread yourself out and be a jack of all trades, or you can just be a master of just 1 or maybe 2. That's what I'm hoping for. Because in Dragon Quest VIII, which this seems like the spiritual successor to, that one was like, you just put skill points into just swords, and once in a while you get an ability. You never knew what you were going to get, so that's how you do it. And that, it was kind of frustrating going back to that game. I was like, okay, so what do I get? I had to look up online what you got as you put points into it, or put point into spears or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of how the skills work for this game. So you can kind of take any of these main characters and put them into whatever role you kind of want them to a certain degree. Not everybody can be like the best healer. Not everyone can do the most damage. But there are some that kind of allow you to dabble in a little bit more than what you would normally get to. So let's get into combat. Combat is a big thing in these games, and one thing that I truly love about Dragon Quest, I mean, there's so many things besides just the music and the little noises everything makes when you pick up an item or you do an attack, like the little numbers and stuff. But the combat, I've always enjoyed it because it's that classic, just old school style of turn-based, you attack, they attack, back and forth. Now, Dragon Quest XI allows you to have this kind of free camera and free movement in the battlefield. You can move your characters around during battle or kind of during your turn. It doesn't seem to have much of a purpose other than just to kind of give you something to do while other enemies are attacking. I thought maybe because I have a rogue on the team, I'd have like a backstab or something, or I'd do more damage if I attack from behind. Doesn't seem to be the case. So you can switch back to the classic mode if you want to, where the camera will just jump, to whatever is happening at that moment, as opposed to just focusing on whomever you moved last, and then the enemies are moving and you're still focused on Erik, per se. So there's that. It's kind of a nice little baby wrinkle to that formula. I mean, it doesn't really change anything. It just changes the dynamic of how you want to see the actual battles play out. And thankfully, the battles are pretty quick. You can choose to get into them or not, because now the enemies are free roaming on the maps, which is great. That's some of the additions they made to the other games, but this is just seeming to be a standard now, which I love because this game is a lot more about exploration and being able to see where monsters are is wonderful, because in the past, especially with Dragon Quest VIII, again, I'll keep going back to this one, but if you're in a dungeon, you kind of run around a little bit and then you just get into a random battle. So exploring was kind of a chore in those games because you never knew what was around any corner, and sometimes there'd be nothing, and you ran around and got into a bunch of battles you didn't necessarily want to, and it made it just way more hard. So that is a nice thing about this game, is that you can see these guys living on the maps. They're just running around. They kind of infinitely respawn, so it's not like you're going to ever wipe out a whole area, which I tried to do once. I was like, why do they keep coming back? But they just are just going to keep coming back no matter what. But I really enjoy that, and the fights can last, you know, maybe 15-20 seconds at the shortest, but they can go for a little bit longer if it's a stronger enemy. But those fights can go by pretty quick, and you can grind it out pretty quickly if that's what you're into, if you want to kind of, you know, get some, like, a lot more experience, or maybe even the chance to fight some of these metal slimes, which I've thankfully run into a few of, which you definitely should try to fight them, because if you can kill them, which it can be difficult, because they have high defense and they're really resistant to magic, but you get a ton of experience from them, and it's really, really nice to just kind of be like, yep, I just gained another level because we just fought these two little metal slimes, which are usually paired with stronger monsters. You might not see them running around, at least in the early stages of the game. So fights are pretty quick. It's very, like, you know, you've got people doing damage, you've got like a dedicated healer, you've got people just like my mage, Veronica. I'm having her try to do damage, but also doing buffs or debuffs to the enemies, and just trying to be intelligent about using those powers in unison along with your pep abilities and your pep powers, which basically, if you play Dragon Quest VIII, you had the Psych Up ability, which allowed you to kind of like psych up your characters multiple turns, and they can do a ton of crazy damage if you just kept psyching them up. But in this one, you get these random activations of pep, which, like, if your character's been doing a lot of attacking, or they've been attacked a lot, or just randomly, they will basically just glow blue, and they will have access to special abilities that they wouldn't normally have. Now, if you get multiple people on your team to do this, you can do combined things. So it's like almost like summons with some of these. So if it's like 2 or 3 members of your party, especially if it's 3, I think that, well, sometimes 2, actually, 2. They do these little cutscenes where it's like you activate a power where you use up both the pep ability, you know, of these 2 people, and it takes that away so they don't do their crazy damage anymore or whatever. It's just that they use their powers together in unison to destroy something, or to buff the whole team, or do something. So, again, if you played any Final Fantasy games, it's very much like having a summon show up, because there's a little cinematic. My favorite that I've seen so far is that you take Serena, the main hero, and Erik, and you do this thing called the Wild Side. And basically, they all use their pep powers, and there's, like, Serena and the main hero are standing on the ground, and they, like, look up, and it's at night for some odd reason. On top of the mountain, there's Erik. And Erik the Rogue, he's screaming in pain. There's a moon behind him. Then he gets red eyes, and both your hero and Serena are like, oh no, what have we done? Like, they're kind of scared. But basically all it does is allows Erik to take multiple turns on his only one turn. So he could attack twice, or he could do 2 spells in that turn. It's nothing crazy, but the little cinematic really just kind of makes it feel like an event, and those things are fun. It is kind of annoying, however, to not know when you're going to get these powers, so it can really come in clutch in a moment where you're like, oh man, we really need something sweet, and other times it just never shows up, and you're like, okay, well, that sucks. But the combat is fun, it's flashy, it's fast, and the monsters, which are always great, have returned. You know, you got your classic slimes, but they have some new ones in here too. It's a lot like Pokemon, where there's just so many, and they have so many different animations and things that they can do in conjunction with these other creatures, as far as, like, you have this one weird, you know, green genie guy who's got a crazy big drum that he can, like, buff enemies with, and that drum's got a mouth and a face and all this crazy stuff. So they're really fun to look at. And thankfully in this game, they have a bestiary where you can, like, pop up a 3D model of any monster, and that gives a little description of them, which is excellent as well. I absolutely love that. I loved looking at that, or looking at the actual characters themselves. You can't really look at weapons that way unless you equip them, so you can look at them on the character. But the rest of that stuff I love, and you know, it probably goes without saying, but the art style is just incredible. I really like it. Some people don't. It's that Akira Toriyama kind of Dragon Ball Z style. So if you like Dragon Ball Z, you're probably going to like how this game looks. And just the overall presentation, when you open up a map, for instance, there's this kind of cool parchment map that shows you where you're looking on it as far as like an arrow, an indicator, but it only takes up half the screen. So if you want to turn and kind of orient yourself on the map, it'll show the other half of the screen, which is still like in real time, where you're pointing and facing, which is really great. I love that. I think every game should have a map like that. But that's pretty much it. So it's kind of that combination of going through of like the story of like combat and again and just trying to get invested in it. This is a much slower paced game than a lot of these other crazy ones you're going to see out there. Much more emphasis on exploration though. They have a jump button now. You can go check out stuff, but it's not like Breath of the Wild exploration. It's like, oh, if you can jump up on this ledge, there might be a treasure chest over here or a sparkly spot. You can dig up something. So it's fun in the respect that these environments, these gorgeous environments that you're going through, have these creatures that you can see out in front of you, and you can decide if you want to explore, if you want to fight, if you don't want to do any of that. They do a lot of things like the map I was saying before, or like giving you a horse really early on, which is like a modern convenience. It's like they give you these things that usually in older games, like traversal, they would wait a long time to give you, and that's really nice because it kind of speeds up the process if you want it. But you have a run button and an auto run, and you can just kind of move around. There's a heal all like thing in your menu, so that way if you want to be out there and you want to grind out fights, you don't have to go through and, you know, heal everybody individually. You can just, or you can just do handy heal all, and it's like the most efficient way possible. Like, you try to do these things to make this really, really long game, just like kind of shave off these old things and kind of make it a little more modernized. So in a way, to me, this feels a lot like what Dragon Quest IX could have been. And I'm really hoping that they kind of keep making games in this vein, where it's like, oh, we can make some pretty big jumps for future. So if you like that old school style and you want a few more modern conveniences, then this game might be for you. But yeah, there it is. That's my thoughts on Dragon Quest XI. It's going to be a long time before I can finally stamp a number on this thing. But I'm kind of, you know, playing it here and there and trying to get into it. It's like Persona 5. It's like a part-time job. It's like, if it's going to be 100 hours, you kind of dedicate a lot of your time to just pressing the X button and going through dialogue. Oh, and one other thing I do want to mention quick, too. There are a few loading screen things. And when I say that, I mean that when you're transitioning in between the overworld and going into like a big city, there'll usually be a loading screen. And if you try to get into a city and run too far into it, sometimes your character will stop moving and it will just say loading. Just a little hiccup, just a little thing, not that big of a deal, but it can be annoying. Just wanted you guys to know that. But the overall presentation of the game, fantastic. The characters, lovable. I can't wait to meet more of them and get to know them better. And the combat still feels great, still really enjoyable. It's not really, you know, very intensive, at least in the beginning. Dragon Quest VIII was a lot harder because you didn't have a healer pretty early on. But it's still one of those things that you have to be smart about, because these guys, you know, these monsters, if you aren't, you know, leveling up, they will destroy you if you're not careful. So just keep that in mind. But if you guys have any other questions, just tweet at me. I'm at JimmyGood013. I hope you guys enjoyed this little review in progress. Sorry it's so late, but I appreciate you guys' patience with it. Nonetheless, full review to come out soon. And if you want to support us, consider liking this video, yes, this one right here, or you can subscribe to the channel if you want to, or just leave a comment. That would be great as well. If you want to support us even further, consider checking us out on patreon.com/criticalreviews. You can throw us $1. If you throw in $5 or more, you can get our podcast, our weekly podcast, The Critical Podcast, a day early. Or you can even starting at that $1 tier, you can get your face drawn and put into our card game that we're working on. Speaking of art, because we're talking about that in this beautiful game here. So if you want to be partaking in any of that, or if you want to support us at all, just share us around. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. And until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome.